Hi, second graders. I'm going to continue on with our chapter, Read Aloud. Remember yesterday, um, Jesse thought about maybe going over to the neighbors and asking them for help since the hurricane is coming and their dad had to leave and their mom isn't home and they're all by themselves. Evan said no. Now, if you were Jesse and Evan, would you be saying no or would you be asking for some help? So let's see what they decide to do. No, said Evan, we don't need them. We're fine. But he knew this wasn't true. There was a hurricane raging outside and a hole the size of a bathtub in their house. But he didn't want to tell anyone that their dad had left them alone, that their mom had gone to California and not come home when she had promised. He didn't know what would happen if anyone found out these things, but he didn't want to risk it. It was better to stay where they were and ride out the storm. But what if, said Jessie, what if the house falls in on us or a window breaks and there's glass everywhere? What if the basement floods and water starts to come upstairs? Evan looked at Jessie, and he could see that the same thought was forming in her head that was taking shape in his. A picture of water seeping into the basement, creeping up inch by inch. Oh, Evan, said Jessie, running to the basement door. We left Professor Hoffman down there all alone. Wait, said Evan, we need a flashlight. He ran upstairs to his mother's bedroom and grabbed a big flashlight, the strongest flashlight that they owned, then grabbed a second one for Jessie. When he got back to the basement door, Jessie was already feeling her way downstairs, gripping the railing and testing each step with her foot. Evan shined the light ahead of them, but they both stopped short before reaching the bottom step. The basement was completely flooded. Water leaked in the creaks of the cement, streaming down the concrete walls like waterfalls. Evan guessed the water was about a foot deep, since the bottom two steps of the staircase were completely submerged. Where is he? Where's his box? Screamed Jessie. Her flashlight beam was jiggling all over the basement, making the room seem to jump before his eyes. I don't know, Jess, said Evan. Just hold steady. Stop flashing your light everywhere. Here, you look on that half and I'll look on this half. There were so many things floating in the water. Old sneakers, a box of light bulbs, a plastic car. Evan pointed his beam of light at a half-inflated beach ball in Jessie's old coloring books. 2 Easter baskets floated by, bobbing in the water like toys in a bathtub. But then Jessie shouted, Look! And she pointed to the corner where her flashlight was aimed. Evan swung the beam of his light too, and they both saw something floating on the surface of the water. It was Professor Hoffman's cardboard box, torn apart and flattened, soaking through the water and empty. Oh no, empty. Where is Professor Hoffman? Jessie ran upstairs to get her high rain boots and then sloshed through the water in the basement, calling out, Professor Hoffman, where are you? It's us, come out. She looked on all the shelves, thinking that perhaps he had stepped up, trying to escape the flood. That would be a natural instinct to an animal, to seek higher ground, but Jessie looked on every shelf in the basement and there was no sign of the rabbit. Evan, who didn't have rain boots, stayed on the stairs and held the flashlight. But after 10 minutes, he said, Jess, we can't stay down here. The water's getting higher and I think there's yucky stuff in it. See? He pointed to the water near the furnace, and Jessie could see that there was this oily slick on the surface. Come on. At the top of the stairs, Jessie pulled off her boots. Where do you think he went? She asked. In her mind, she knew the answer. Professor Hoffman had drowned. And when the storm ended and the water emptied out of the basement, they would find a small, limp body, and he would never do a magic trick again. Jessie had never loved an animal before, but she loved Professor Hoffman. She loved him because he was quiet and predictable and simple, and he didn't need much. Sometimes he was calm and sometimes he was nervous, but mostly he just wanted to eat lettuce and occasionally a radish. He needed water and his box cleaned out from time to time, and you could count on him to do his job. He was an easy rabbit to understand. She tried not to think too much about what he had gone through at the end. She told herself that rabbits don't feel fear the way humans do. But as the morning stretched on and the storm continued to rage, Jessie knew more and more. She grew more and more frightened herself, and she couldn't help thinking of Professor Hoffman. Evan, the buckets are overflowing, Jessie said, looking in her bedroom for the 5th time that day. It was incredible how fast they filled now that the rain was coming down harder and harder. Give me a second, Evan called back. There's another leak in the kitchen. The ceiling in the kitchen had started to drip in the afternoon, and Evan and Jessie were on steady patrol, checking each room for new leaks. So far, there was one in their mother's bedroom, one in the bathroom, and 3 in the kitchen. The only room that had managed to stay completely dry was the family room, and that's where Evan and Jessie had moved their supplies to, and where they would hunker down between patrols. This is hard, said Jessie at one point. She was trying to open a jar of pickles. Jessie loved pickles, but her mom never let her have more than 2 at a time because eating too many gave her a stomachache. I can do it, said Evan, reaching for the pickle jar. He was eating chips dipped in cold, hot fudge sauce. Ooh, that's disgusting, said Jessie matter-of-factly. Actually, it's not half bad, said Evan, returning the pickle jar with the lid loosened. Don't eat more than 2. I know, said Jessie. She didn't like touching food with her hands, particularly wet, cold food, so she used a fork to stab the pickle and fish it out of the jar. As she crunched, she thought of Professor Hoffman, and she said, this is hard. What? Everything. This whole storm, it's just a lot of work and a lot of sadness, she thought. Yeah, I'm tired. Do we have to stay up all night because of the bucket, said Jessie. I guess, unless the storm stops. Do you think it's slowing down? They both listened to the howling of the wind and the slapping of the rain against the windows. Jessie had almost gotten used to it. The storm had been going on for so long, it felt like days and days. No, she said finally, I don't think it's slowing down at all. I wish we had a radio, said Evan, for about the 4th time that day. I just want to know what's going on. Jessie finished her 2nd pickle, thought about taking a 3rd, and then she put the lid back on the jar. She had been very hungry all day, but she knew she should eat something to keep up her strength. She reached for the last Lorna Doodle in its plastic sleeve. You want to split it, she asked. Nah, I already had about 10 of them. Evan leaned back and he closed his eyes. Jessie thought he was going to fall asleep right there on the couch. But then he sat up and he said, I better go check the basement to see if the water's gotten higher. Jessie hadn't gone back down to the basement since the morning. She just couldn't bear it. But Evan had checked every hour, counting the number of steps that were still untouched by the water. At last, check, the water had risen so high that only 10 steps were still above the water. What if the water reached the top step and started to spill into the kitchen? Jessie took a deep breath. I'll come with you, she said. I thought of going down those stairs, descending into the murky darkness of all that whirling water. The thought of it made Jessie feel as if she were lowering herself into a deep, dark well. Plus, it wasn't just a basement anymore. It was a graveyard. You don't have to, said Evan. I can go by myself. But Jessie insisted, so they rounded up every flashlight they could find, 7 in all, and turned them all on. Evan carried 2 under his arm and 2 in his hands, while Jessie carried all 3 of hers in a bundle. She wanted a good strong light for whatever laid ahead. Before opening the basement door, Evan stopped. Jess, if the water's really high, I think we have to go get help. Mean we have to tell someone that Dad left us? Evan nodded his head. Saying it out loud sounded so awful. Dad left us. Jessie wondered if he would be arrested. Were there laws against leaving kids in a hurricane? There should be. All right, let's see if the water in the basement is getting higher, if they're going to go get help or continue to weather the hurricane on their own. Bye. Have a good day.